Hello everyone, I'm Caroline Cherry and welcome to the Refinitiv Perspectives Live 24-hour special event. Today we're running an episode on the hour, every hour, all the way through to tomorrow at 11 a.m. SET. Be sure to join the event group to get access to all of the day's content and videos, and don't forget to subscribe to the blog. So for episode 15 today, we have Wayne Bryan, who is a senior energy and commodity analyst at Refinitiv.
Hi, Caroline. How you doing?
Thanks for joining us. So for this time, we're going to jump right in. Obviously, 2020 has been an extremely eventful year in all aspects. But looking specifically at LNG, gas, and trading space, how did the events of 2020 affect these industries? Give us the rundown of what happened in 2020.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I think a lot happened in the last 12 months or so, but I think I'll start here. Where we are now compared to where we were last year, the price is double on the UK market. On the European market, we're seeing global gas hubs at record highs, including in Asia. So let's go back to the start of this time last year. So 2020, January, February, it was very mild in both Asia and Europe. We had a lot of LNG cargoes flowing into Northwest Europe. As we got through January, February, still no real cold winter. This led to European gas storages filling up a lot quicker than usual because the usual heating demand wasn't there. So even before we got to the start of the summer season, which starts April the 1st, we already had concerns about oversupply, acute storages, that sort of thing. And of course, middle of February onwards here comes COVID. The impact on COVID obviously was quite stark on demand and mobility. As restrictions kicked in, people's movements were restricted. We saw a lot of changes in manufacturing processes and production, so demand really started falling. As we started going into the summer, this exacerbated the situation further. We saw more and more LNG cargoes still coming. Prices had to react, and in the European market, we hit the bottom. We were at the lowest prices we've seen for that time of year. Not only was that exacerbated by the amount of gas we had, also external markets were collapsing. Oil collapsed to the lows that we know, coal market collapsed, carbon, financial markets. All this created like a plethora of bullish factors, and it created a perfect storm, really. So as we got into about June, export economics for US LNG began to turn negative. So for anyone sending these cargoes from US to Europe, they'd be sending it obviously not at a profit. So what we started to see was cancellations as well. And that was the theme throughout from probably June right the way through to August. We saw about 160 US LNG cargo cancellations. Now, the effect on that, it was quite bullish on prices, but no one saw what would happen over the following few months. So again, I could speak for a long time on this, but I'll try and fast forward it a little bit. So as we came out of the sort of July, August, and we start approaching winter season again, typically in gas markets is when we start to think about how's the storage levels. Well, storage levels are still in a good place. Market got a little bit complacent, I think. Temperatures were still warm. Then we saw colder weather really start to kick in Asia. Then we saw a similar situation happen in Europe. This dragged up the prices. We saw Asian prices as recent as a couple of weeks ago at record levels. This, of course, incentivized European gas prices to also start to rise. Also contributing, we saw shipping and logistical problems. So the Panama Canal is widely used as a route. Some congestion there has meant some cargoes have had to take the long route around the Cape of Good Hope or go through the Suez Canal. So not only did that add to journey times, it also made a bit of a backlog in getting supplies to Asia. Charter rates of ships rose to around $350,000 a day, way above what we normally see. So all of a sudden, the situation we experienced a few months ago had completely flipped. Demand started to recover as some countries came out of restrictions. China especially, demand there started to rise. Then we get to a situation now where European gas markets are at levels or were at levels we hadn't seen in 12 years in some instances. Record prices driven by a lack of LNG, unlike, as I mentioned at the start, last January, February, March, we couldn't get enough of the stuff. Now we're seeing a complete dearth of cargoes into Northwest Europe, and this has lifted up the prices. if you now look at the storage levels as well, storage levels now across Europe are at real lows compared to where we usually are. For example, Northwest European storages are normally, this time last year, at about 344 terawatts. Now we're down to probably by the end of next month, about 124 or 25% of the total capacity. So that leads us to more problems. We've still got extant problems in the Panama Canal. We've still got some production issues across several major producers, Indonesia, Australia, etc., only adding to what we've seen in terms of the last 12 months. So I think it's been a really interesting 12 months in terms of price movement and a kind of switching dynamics as to where we were this time last year.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So we've had cancellations, production issues, record highs, and everything. But we've seen this completely flop from last year. So moving forward, what can we expect for 2021? How do you see this year looking?
Well, looking forward over the coming months, I think what we've seen over the last few days is weather forecasts for Europe and for Asia have been revised a bit warmer. Now, that has a big impact in terms of gas demand, especially when you think COVID restrictions across many countries means not only are we in our domestic residences a lot more. I'm definitely a case, for example, here because I'm constantly at home, my heating's on, I'm not in the office. Also, as well, the lack of mixing between households means most people are in their own actual residences. And the weather's been actually really cold the last month or two. So what that's doing is driving up the demand. So again, that's also contributed. What we expect over the coming months now is the weather's starting to get a little bit warmer. We'll see less demand come out of China. And by the time we get to the end of the winter gas season, which is the end of March, I think we're going to see storages at quite a low level. And that's a big concern now. So what we saw last summer, and again, it's a kind of reversal, we won't be seeing US cargo cancellations like we observed last summer. In fact, if you look at the futures curve and the economics of it, US LNG exports to Europe will be back in the money over the next couple of months, because we need to fill the storage levels, unlike last summer. Also, as well, there's a lot more production. Speaking to our LNG team earlier, and they're talking about a lot more production, maybe 12 more BCM of supply this year as well. So we've also got some of the outages that we had previously coming back online. We're going to see more supply from Egypt. Also, we've got Japan as well, where obviously since Fukushima, they restricted nuclear generation of electricity. They've had a few of these plants have come back online, but they have to go through local regulatory. And also the people who live in the actual communities also have a say in that. So potentially we could see 4 to 6 of them come back online. We're seeing more pipe gas in China. So I think we're going to be in a lot better place going into this winter coming as opposed to last winter. And I think, as I mentioned at the start, the market has sort of got a bit complacent, thought we had enough gas, thought we could cope with anything. And then that confluence of events obviously saw prices at record highs. So I believe the prospects moving into this winter are a switch in dynamics, more of a focus on filling up storages. We're going to see the oil price start to rise as COVID restrictions start to come off. Demand will start to rise. Associated gas production from oil rigs will start to increase. So we expect a lot more from the US in terms of exports. And they've also bought a few new trains online as well. So the prospects for me at the moment are a lot more lively, or a lot more better than they were, just say a month or two ago when the concerns were quite high. So a bit of a bearish perspective over the last few days.
Yeah, that's great. And especially we're talking, I mean, today it's like inauguration day in the US. There's so many different, the vaccines are rolling out. What type of effect do you think this has had also on the market?
I think as well, a bit of uncertainty, because we do know certain things about the Biden administration, but in terms of what he's going to do to the oil and gas industry, there's only been certain things that I've read so far, but it will have an impact. One thing I will note that actually was quite surprising was yesterday, Gazprom are trying to build Nord Stream 2. Now, this will supply a lot of gas into Europe. Now, Europe's already quite reliant on Gazprom and Russian gas, about 37% of supplies last year. Now, President Trump's administration were very much so against this pipeline. calling it Competition Against Anti-American Adversary Trust Act. So they've been sanctioning companies who've been involved in making it, in actually constructing the pipeline, sanctioning shipping companies. And this really had halted the pipeline. But the last couple of months, we saw the pipeline get to about, I think, 94% completion. However, yesterday, another sanction was issued by the US on a Russian ship laying company. So that tells me that the current administration as well are going to continue on that tact. And that will have an impact on our markets if Nord Stream 2 doesn't get completed. This has been going on for a couple of years now. So I think that will be a key factor in what happens with the new administration. Also, I'm reading about the federal land awards in terms of drilling. And I know, we all know Trump allowed drilling to happen anywhere, regardless of the environmental impact. I don't think that will be the case. I think the Americans will return to the climate change policy and get back on board with that. So I think there's some real big changes and hopefully positive changes in our industry over the coming year or so, after what was quite a bad 12 months in terms of, if you look at the environmental side of things.
Yeah, of course. And I totally agree with what you're saying about how now, the new administration, we're looking at kind of changes towards keeping in line with sustainability, ESG, these different types of things. But thank you so much for joining us. It's been so nice to talk to you. And I'm glad that we could get an outlook on what's going on in 2021. So if you enjoyed this episode, you can learn more about our natural gas research by scanning the code or going to the link on our screen now. As always, thank you for joining us, and be sure to stay tuned for the next episode on the Hour with an economic outlook of 2021.